Let's discuss how easy or how difficult it is to implement such solutions into the practice, into clinical routine.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's the most relevant question, right? You know, when you look at these solutions, how long does it take? What does it mean to actually adopt that? So I think you have to look at that in probably two ways. The first is, what does it take to technically implement a solution? And the second is, what does it take to implement a solution into clinical practice, into clinical workflows? So, you know, technically it very much depends on the healthcare landscape that you're integrating or implementing within. And it depends largely on the availability of IT resources within a hospital. But, you know, certainly for us, we've done this many, many times, and everything's possible, right? You can integrate with lots of different systems. Probably the more interesting one is, what does it mean from a clinical workflow perspective? So largely, if I showed you one of our solutions, it would probably take someone 15 to 20 minutes to work out how to do it. But we've actually studied the implementation numbers of times, and because you don't have all clinicians in one room at one time, for a kind of asynchronous training of clinicians, it probably takes 3 to 4 weeks before a tumour board is just running completely normally. And the final thing I'd say on that is that the solution in itself is not making the intervention. What the solution is doing is it's sustaining and maintaining the intervention, and over time improving it. So what you don't see is a change, everyone's really good at doing tumour boards, and then they kind of fall off. The solution keeps them at that level.
One thing is technical background, another human approach. What biggest challenges have you faced so far?
When you say human approach, you mean the mindset of clinicians? Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm a clinician myself. I think that means you're kind of trained to be skeptical and cynical of digital health solutions. Having said that, you know, we've seen so much benefits in terms of, you know, these solutions are easy to use. I think that helps dramatically. I think when we do it, we really think about how does a clinical team need to adopt this. So in that 4-week period I described, we tend to have what you call a hypercare. So we're there. We want to make sure people understand how to use it. We create lots of you know, in the actual tumour board to make sure people are understanding how to use it. But after 3 or 4 weeks, we're not needed anymore. People have just adopted this, they know how to do it. And I think people are now coming around to the huge opportunity of digital solutions, particularly because of COVID. Because in COVID, it became incredibly difficult to maintain care because of the requirement not to meet in the same room. And digital solutions like this actually completely enabled hospitals to continue normal care because they were able to meet virtually.
Maybe you can describe some examples from your practice. You can tell us something as surgeon. What about your experiences from United States or Japan?
Yeah, well, I tried to kind of, in the presentation, go over the case study with Missouri. So Missouri is an interesting, medium-sized academic medical center. It has a whole variety of different types of tumour boards. And we studied 1,800 patient cases in breast cancer, head and neck cancer, and colorectal cancer. And we were able to really analyse how long it takes to prepare a case and how our solution changed that preparation. So one of the things that we saw was that for each case, it's roughly taking 60 to 65 minutes to prepare that case. Now, one individual's contribution may be 5 or 10 minutes, but when you add that up, it's 60 to 65 minutes, which is a huge amount of time of clinicians, you know, clinicians and allied health professional time preparing cases. So here, that preparation, that looking for information, that's automatically done. So it's really a case of considering the information and making the best treatment decision rather than logging into systems and trying to find data. As I said in the presentation, we know it speeds up time by 30%. We also know that in the presentation, it speeds up the presentation of cases. But what it's really doing there is just standardizing. So every case presentation is roughly 5.5 to 6 minutes. And what that means is you can very accurately predict how many cases you can discuss in a meeting. And what we also showed was that because you have the right information, clinicians are able to reach a decision almost every time, which for patients is incredibly reassuring, and also for clinicians increases their confidence that, yes, we've made the right decision as a group.
Let's pay a little bit more attention to what type of evidence do you have to support your products?
So different topic. So I think you have to think of evidence, and this is what consumes my days. You have to think of evidence in terms of evidence of safety and evidence of value. So let me talk about evidence of safety. For a lot of the products that people are presenting here, when it becomes a software as a medical device, there are very specific requirements that one has to follow. So for software as a medical device, and I'll give you the FDA example, you need to establish that there's clinical association, so that the test that you've digitalized is actually a relevant test for that patient. That's generally done through a literature review, and it has to be done constantly to make sure that the literature is not changing. The second thing is verification. So you have to be able to say that the calculations you're doing are actually being done properly and accurately. And the third thing is validation. So you have to validate that the claims you make of your product are legitimate. So there are these three different buckets, and definitely the longest part of that is the clinical validation. In some cases, depending on the classification of the product, that will require a clinical study. And you put all of that as a package. So first what we do is we do a pre-submission to the FDA, and they review our plan and they say, yes, we like this, or no, we don't like this. And normally they come back with comments, and we tailor the design of the study. That pre-submission piece takes 4 months to come back. So I think someone earlier this morning was making a comment about speeding up approvals. The bottleneck is not doing the studies. The bottleneck will always be the FDA, or in Europe it will be the notified bodies. Now, then you've got to do the study. Overall, that can take anywhere between 6 months and 24 months, depending on the complexity of the study. So that's really the evidence of safety. Now, at that stage, I would say you have what we would say in the UK, table stakes. You can't bring a product into a healthcare environment unless it's approved. So then I think what healthcare systems are looking for is, how do you show evidence that this product offers the value you claim? So here we're talking about saving clinicians time, or improving diagnostic accuracy, or even generating revenue for hospitals. Decision makers in hospitals need that evidence. They need to see what is the return on investment that they're going to get from a product like a tumor board, or from a product like a digital pathology platform. So when we think about evidence for Roche, we're thinking, yes, we need to prove that this is safe, and we need to get this past the regulatory requirements, but we're also thinking about how are we showing the value of these products. And the reason we think about the value of the products is because at the moment, generally, globally, we don't really have good reimbursement models or pathways for digital products. So for anyone who's trying to bring a solution into a clinical environment where there is significant financial constraint, one really needs to demonstrate that this is having a really positive ROI for that provider. So when I think about evidence, I think about all of those different components, and hopefully others are thinking that way too.
We are still open to your questions, to the questions of our audience. Ešte stále môžete posielať otázky, a už tu aj jednu máme. How do you deal with heterogeneity of IT infrastructure at the different hospitals? Do you essentially need to build custom solutions for individual hospitals?
Yeah, so this is a great question, and it's the biggest challenge for any health IT provider, I think. I think we would take a point of principle on this, is that we don't build customizable solutions because they don't scale. What we try to do is build configurable solutions. So we build enough flexibility into the solution that we're able to adapt it to different systems. Because once you customize solutions, you start to create code branching, and that can be really difficult when you try to take a product to scale. So that's the first point, configurability, not customizability. And then when it comes to the health ecosystem, yes, absolutely, people are right. These are very diverse environments. And we've certainly dealt with a whole range of different systems. What I would say there is it's super important that as a community, we advocate for interoperability standards. So if we are building to the latest interoperability, which is FHIR, Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resource, that enables systems to connect to each other very quickly. So I think it will take time, but if we follow those interoperability standards, then some of these challenges will start to go away, and they'll start to hugely enable what we all envision.
Thank you very much. Finally, let's summarize impact on patients. Do we have any more statistics?
Yeah, I mean, I think... Oh, is that it's still on? I think there's a huge opportunity for patients, and what we were talking about before, particularly when we think about solutions in oncology, is time to treatment. I think having the right information at the right time, shared with the right group of clinicians who are the decision makers, enables patients to get the right care decision as fast as possible. And we know that time to treatment significantly impacts on overall survival. And there was a recent paper in the BMJ that actually showed that statistically. So I would say that digital solutions are about enabling good decision making, giving clinicians confidence, and giving patients peace of mind that all of the information about their care has been considered.
Thank you very much for this discussion. Matthew Prime, Roche Information Solutions.
Thank you very much.
Have a nice day.